Okay, real quick. Officers will say, well, that's a good shoot, that's a good shoot. But you have to look at it. Is there something questionable in the situation, in the incident, on the scene that could have been done better, whether it's the officer or the public? In a lot of cases, it's the public that initiates. So, again, in that particular case, I can't speak to the follow-on shooting, if it even happened. It's in a lawsuit by the family. But I can't speak to that original thing the best I can. I don't have video. But what I believe happened is he had the firearm in his hand because he's going to tell the officer about it, which is really the wrong thing to do. You put the darn thing in your pocket, you put it in the ground, and you take 5 steps back before the officer even gets out of the vehicle. So again, I wouldn't even have it in my hand. You just keep it in your pocket. You put your hands up, say, officer, there's a fake gun in my pocket, or something like that, or a replica gun. It's not real. It's a BB gun. So the officer knows right away that it's probably not real, but he doesn't know 100%. So you still can't go for it. The idea is you do what the officer tells you, but generally he's probably going to, you could even tell the officer, hey, I don't want to touch it. Can you come in and take it? Right? I don't want to touch it. Right? That's probably the best thing to do. But if the officer tells you, because again, you could be there could be a question of what's happening. An officer might tell you to throw it. I think he did is he raised the weapon. The officer said drop it, and he picked it up to throw it, which is a movement that the officer looks for somebody that's going to shoot. So that's why that particular part of it was a good shoot. Right. Now, as far as 22 rounds, like I said, psychology will break in those situations, and that will happen. So again, it's called the police department probably looked at the but for that weapon being produced. Would our officer have been in this situation? No. Right. But for that movement, possibly what's considered a furtive movement or any movement. Right. So again, the public needs to know not to try to produce a firearm or fake firearm until the officer says something. And even then, it's dangerous. So the officer itself, if they feel comfortable enough, should walk up on the individual. Now, again, walking up on the individual could cause a scenario, right? The officer could say, lay on the ground, put your hands in front of you, and then walk up that way. That might be a little bit better. You can see the hands, and it's not anywhere near the body. Say, don't move at all. And maybe get to the point where you even cuff the individual before you go for the firearm, right? Or even tell them to lay there till another officer arrives on the scene, which is probably the safest, but may not be feasible in that area, a rural area of New Mexico, or semi-rural at least. Thank you, Barry. If you hear me say stuff like that, there's spirits out there, the spirits around me. There's people listening, there's spirits, there's God, and I'll articulate that while I'm speaking sometimes, actually most of the time. People hear that in their head sometimes when they're speaking. I'll articulate it. I really can't hear in my head too well. Now, if I have a conversation with you, I generally don't do that. They've been trying to make me do that. They're nuts, man. Believe me, they do the opposite of what they tell you they're doing. And of course, sometimes they call them deep state, but it doesn't mean that they're all Democrats or anything like that. There are Republicans that do that. So again, the idea is to fix the issue the best you can on an after-action review. So if you see that the member of the public did something wrong, you have to notify the public that there's a better way to do this. So we don't sit here a year later with the same question, pondering the same answers. Right. So I would say in New Mexico especially that needs to be done. I don't think, I think there's a lot going through their head. If I have it in my pocket, is it concealed? Am I then in trouble? Again, there is a legal question about weapons being concealed. Right. But again, life and death is in the hands of the situation. Sometimes it's not even in the hands of the officer because the officer is trained a certain way. So the officer has a little bit of tunnel vision. He's looking at that firearm. What I believe happened, I don't have the video, is he moved the firearm upwards instead of downwards. Right. And that's what did it. So we're looking at something similar that happened in Albuquerque, right? As far as that part of it. I can't remember the full thing. It was the homeless camper guy or something. They had knives or something. Right. So again, we need to educate the public on what to do. And then there's the question, again, I work on a certain wavelength. Years ago, probably 23 years ago or something like that, there was a DEA task force officer that saw a furtive movement in the darkness. It was a cell phone. It was, he was cleared, but we need to try to fix that stuff. Right? There's no reason to be pulling your cell phone out of your waistband or somewhere near your waistband. Correct. So public needs to know you just freeze and that's it. I mean, it's just the way it is. Again, when I'm pulled over, I don't go for anything. I take my hands, I put them on top of the steering wheel. Everybody else should do the same. It's just we live in a world where officers are in danger. They're trained a certain way. Don't trigger that training, and that's what happened there. Now, he kind of lost it. I mean, it's a lot of rounds, but again, that does happen. I explained that. Even in training, when your adrenaline's rushing. All right, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.